That day, Bella said through her tears that the weight loss perfume her mom had brought back from Thailand for us to use together wasn't some miracle slimming tool, but a vicious curse. It had a sinister side effect. Every ounce of weight the user lost was transferred directly to the person they hated most. That's why, after dieting and exercising to the point of collapse, my weight had skyrocketed to an uncontrollable 180 pounds. And that's why Bella had slimmed down to nothing in no time. Fitting into a size small dress I couldn't even dream of squeezing into. With her arm linked through Lucas's, the guy I'd had a secret crush on for 3 whole years. Standing below the rooftop, I looked up at my bloated, desperate self as a smug, contemptuous smile spread across her face. Anna, you're as fat as a pig. How can you even stand to be alive? You're disgusting. Get away from me. You fat slob, our family doesn't have a disgraceful daughter like you. The taunts from my classmates, my mom's disgust, Lucas's cold stare, and Bella's venomous, smiling face all spun wildly in my head. They finally dissolved into a dull thud and an endless darkness as I hit the ground. Anna, what are you spacing out for? A familiar, sickening voice pulled me from the chaos. I snapped my eyes open, my heart hammering against my ribs so hard I thought they'd crack. The sunlight was blinding, and I squinted, trying to focus on the person in front of me. Bella. She stood there holding a small, exquisite bottle. It was a strange violet color, and a translucent liquid sloshed inside. Her eyes were slightly red, as if she were deeply concerned for me, but a flicker of malice like the flick of a snake's tongue was hidden in their depths. This scene was all too familiar. It was a break between classes, not long after the start of my senior year, the year I turned 18. This was the day Bella gave me the perfume, a gift disguised as a curse. I'd been reborn. I was back at the very beginning, before the tragedy even started. A wave of immense joy and bone-deep hatred washed over me, making my whole body tremble. I dug my nails into my palm, using the pain to force myself to stay calm. Don't panic. Don't give anything away. Bella, Lucas, and everyone else who mocked and trampled on me this time, you'll all pay 100 times over. Anna. Seeing me silent for so long, Bella put on a perfectly worried expression and pushed the perfume a little closer. See, this is that Thai weight loss perfume I told you about. I heard it works wonders. My mom had a really hard time getting 2 bottles. One for you, one for me. We promised we'd get skinny and pretty together. She even blinked hard, squeezing out tears that weren't there. Last time, I was completely fooled by her heartfelt act. I was so moved I burst into tears on the spot, hugging her tightly and calling her the best and only friend I'd ever have. And what did I get in return? I swallowed the metallic taste rising in my throat and forced my lips into a smile even more sincere and moved than hers. I reached out and took the bottle of poison, which gave off a faint, strange scent. As my fingertips touched the cool glass, I could almost feel the malicious energy swirling within the liquid. Bella, I said, my voice soft and sweet with gratitude. You're too good to me. Thank you. A flicker of triumphant relief crossed Bella's eyes, but she maintained her look of sisterly devotion. What's there to thank me for? We're best friends. Just remember to spray it every day, okay? Especially before a workout. That's when it works best. Okay, I definitely will. I nodded enthusiastically and carefully tucked the perfume into the deepest pocket of my backpack, as if it were a priceless treasure. Bella smiled, satisfied, and linked her arm through mine. Come on, class is about to start. Feeling the false warmth of her arm, I sneered inwardly. Oh, I'll spray it, all right. But where I spray it is up to me. The moment the final bell rang, I told Bella I needed to buy some study guides and went my own way. I didn't go to the bookstore. Instead, I looped around to the quiet little road behind the school. After making sure no one was around, I pulled the perfume bottle from my bag. The violet liquid refracted the sunset, casting an eerie glow. This was the thing that had pushed me into hell in my past life. I twisted off the cap. A cloyingly sweet smell, mixed with an indescribable hint of something rotten, filled the air. Just smelling it made my stomach turn. Without hesitating, I walked over to a trash can on the side of the road, tilted the bottle, and watched as the viscous liquid gurgled into the filthy bin. When the last drop fell, I tossed the empty bottle in after it, as if disposing of a deadly virus. But after doing all that, I didn't feel relieved. I had gotten rid of my bottle, but Bella still had hers, and she would definitely use it. I had to find a way to make it seem like her fattening perfume was working on herself. An opportunity came quickly. On Friday night, my mom asked me to take some homemade preserves over to Bella's house. In my past life, I was so self-conscious about my weight that I rarely visited her. But right now, I was only 145 pounds. I wasn't skinny, but I was far from being a shut-in. I stood downstairs from Bella's apartment, holding the jar of preserves. She lived on the third floor of an old-style residential building. I knew the layout well. I knew where her air conditioning unit was installed, and the general location of the ventilation ducts. Most importantly, Bella had a routine. From 7 to 8 p.m., she always went to the yoga class at the gym across from our complex. At this time, her apartment was usually empty. At 7:10 p.m., after confirming Bella had left the complex in her workout clothes, I quietly slipped up to the third floor. There was a small shoe cabinet outside her door. I knew her mom kept a spare key hidden inside an old pair of cotton slippers on the bottom shelf. It was easy to find. I opened the door. The apartment was dark, just as I thought, no one home. My heart was pounding, not from fear, but from excitement. I quickly slipped inside, gently closed the door, and left the lights off. Using the faint glow from the streetlights outside, I found Bella's room with pinpoint accuracy. I pushed the door open, and that familiar sweet and rotten scent drifted out. On her vanity, the violet perfume bottle was sitting in a prominent spot. I walked over and picked it up. It was still more than half full. Bella, you really did start using it already. I unscrewed the cap and, without a moment's hesitation, carried the bottle out of her room. I had a clear target. The inconspicuous louvered vent in the corner of the living room, which connected to the entire building's ventilation system. This is it. I aimed the bottle's opening at the metal slats inside the vent and poured out the remaining perfume without a second thought. The thick liquid slid down the slats into the dark depths of the duct. The cloying scent instantly filled the air before being carried away by the airflow, leaving not a single drop behind. After I was done, I placed the empty bottle back on Bella's vanity exactly where I found it, wiped away any potential traces I might have left, and slipped out as quietly as I had come in, returning the key to its hiding place. Walking home, the cool night breeze on my face did little to extinguish the fire of revenge burning in my heart. Bella, you wanted to be thin, didn't you? You wanted to use me as your personal fat dumpster? This time, you can enjoy it all yourself. Let's see where your own fat can run now. From that day on, I began a frantic mission to save myself. I woke up at 5 every morning and ran laps around our neighborhood until my workout clothes were soaked with sweat. Breakfast was a hard-boiled egg and oatmeal. Lunch was chicken breast and broccoli. Dinner was just a little fruit and yogurt. After school, I'd go straight to the school gym to lift weights, jump rope, and do all kinds of cardio until I was completely exhausted. It was grueling. Every breath burned in my lungs, and every aching muscle screamed at me to quit. But whenever I closed my eyes, scenes from my past life would flash before me. Bella's triumphant smile, Lucas's disdainful gaze, the other students' unrestrained mockery, my mom's disappointed sighs, and the bone-chilling cold and despair of falling from the rooftop. Those images were like a whip, driving me forward, not allowing me a moment of weakness. At the same time, I kept a close eye on Bella. At first, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. She was still her clingy self, linking her arm through mine and sharing her so-called dieting tips. Every now and then, she'd ask with fake concern, "Anna, how come you don't seem to have lost any weight? If anything, you look a little bigger. Did you stop using the perfume? You have to keep using it. It really works." I'd look at her face full of fake sympathy and laugh internally. But on the outside, I'd pinch the side of my waist with a frustrated look. I don't know. Maybe it's just my body type. I've been working out so much, I'm probably just gaining muscle. A flash of delight crossed Bella's eyes, but she just patted my arm comfortingly. It's okay. Persistence is key. Look, I think I've lost a little weight recently, she'd add, deliberately twirling in front of me to show off a figure that hadn't changed at all. I played along, feigning envy. Wow, you're right, Bella. You look more toned. That perfume really must be working. You have to keep it up. Of course, Bella said, lifting her chin proudly. But her good fortune didn't last long. After about 2 or 3 weeks, something started to seem off with Bella. She stopped showing off her weight loss progress and started complaining occasionally. It's so weird. I haven't been eating much and I'm still working out, but I feel like I'm getting a little belly. A week later, her complaints became more frequent. This is so annoying. This dress was loose on me last year. Why is it so tight now? Do I look bloated? My face seems rounder. Every time she complained, I'd lean in with a concerned expression. No way. Are you about to get your period? It's normal to be bloated. Or maybe you're not working out hard enough. We could add another set tonight. Bella was skeptical but clearly preferred to believe it was just temporary bloating or her cycle. She increased her workout intensity and ate even less than I did for dinner. But it was all in vain. The gears of fate had started turning in the opposite direction. A month later, during gym class, we had to run the half-mile. In my past life, at this point, the perfume had already caused my weight to balloon. I was panting and struggling, a total mess. Bella, on the other hand, was as light as a feather, finishing with a great time and earning cheers from a lot of the guys, including Lucas. This time, the roles were reversed. When the starting pistol fired, I shot off like an arrow. The month of intense training had paid off. My body felt lighter and stronger than ever. My breathing was steady, my stride powerful. But Bella, she had barely finished the first lap before her pace slowed dramatically. Her face was flushed, and she was gasping for air like a broken accordion. Her workout clothes, which used to fit perfectly, were now stretched tight, revealing noticeable rolls of fat around her waist and thighs. Why is Bella running so slow? Whoa, has she gained a lot of weight? Look at her legs, they're like tree trunks. And she has a gut. The students on the sidelines started pointing and whispering, their comments loud enough for us to hear. Bella's face went from red to white, then to a sickly green. Her eyes were filled with panic and disbelief. She tried to speed up, but her heavy legs wouldn't obey. She stumbled and nearly fell. I kept a steady pace and was the first to cross the finish line, only slightly out of breath. The gym teacher looked at me with surprise and marked a superior next to my name on his clipboard. I turned around to look at Bella, who was still struggling on the track, practically being dragged across the finish line by a few other students. She collapsed onto the ground, her hair matted to her face with sweat. Her clothes were soaked through, clinging to a body that was clearly a size larger, leaving her looking utterly defeated. A few girls gathered around her, pretending to comfort her, but their eyes were full of amusement. Bella, are you okay? How did you gain so much weight? Yeah, it's like you've been inflated like a balloon recently. Have you been secretly binging on snacks? Bella shot her head up, her eyes glaring murderously at the girls. I haven't. I've been eating almost nothing. I exercise every day. Her voice was shrill, on the verge of a hysterical sob. Her gaze shot past the crowd and locked onto me. I stood a short distance away. My cheeks flushed a healthy pink from the run, a few beads of sweat on my forehead. But I stood tall, and my school uniform, which had been a bit tight before, now looked almost loose. I met her gaze calmly, a faint smile playing on my lips, a curve so slight only she could see it. It held mockery, pity, and a touch of cold satisfaction. Bella's pupils constricted as if she finally understood something. Her face went deathly pale. Bella's eyes were like poison-tipped needles fixed on me. Her lips trembled as if she wanted to say something, but in the end, she just dropped her head, her shoulders shaking violently. The murmurs from the crowd grew louder. Look at her. You'd think she's been horribly wronged. She can't control her own appetite. Who's she gonna blame? I used to think she was kind of pretty. Now the stares that once fell on me, the whispers that followed me, were all directed at her. I stood there, feeling a complex mix of emotions churning inside me, the thrill of revenge, and a kind of cold, calm detachment. This is just the beginning, Bella. From that day on, Bella's weight gain was like a runaway train, completely out of control. She tried everything, starving herself until she got so dizzy in class she had to be sent to the nurse's office, exercising manically, until she threw up on the track, even secretly taking her mom's diet pills, until she was weak from diarrhea. But the number on the scale just kept climbing. Soon, she had to get a new custom-made uniform. Her once delicate face was stretched by the encroaching fat, her eyes squeezed into narrow slits. She started getting winded just from walking, and going up and down stairs became a form of torture. In stark contrast, my own progress was becoming more and more obvious. The number on my scale kept dropping. My waist grew slender, my legs long and toned. My features, once hidden by fat, became sharp and defined. My skin, thanks to a healthy diet and exercise, was clear and bright. I started getting love letters. Guys would sneak glances at me in the hallway. Even Lucas, who used to ignore me, started looking my way more and more often. One day during a break, I was looking down, organizing my notes, when a shadow fell over my desk. I looked up and met Lucas's handsome but hesitant eyes. He was holding a sports drink, a charming smile plastered on his face. "Anna, I see you've been working out really hard lately. This is for you." He placed the drink on my desk, deliberately slowing the motion so the expensive watch on his wrist caught the light. In my past life, that watch was an unattainable dream. Even looking at it felt like a mockery. A single smile from him could make my heart race all night. But now all I felt was cold contempt. I looked at him, not touching the drink, and said flatly, "Thanks, but I'm not thirsty." The smile on Lucas's face froze. He clearly hadn't expected to be rejected. He paused, then tried another topic. "You've changed so much lately. I almost didn't recognize you." "Really?" I pulled at the corner of my mouth, my gaze drifting past him to the bloated, isolated figure in the back of the classroom. Bella was staring daggers at us, her eyes overflowing with jealousy and resentment. I smirked to myself and deliberately raised my voice so Bella could hear. "It's probably because I'm focused on what's important, unlike some people who spend all their time on shady schemes and end up hurting themselves." Lucas didn't catch my double meaning. He thought I was agreeing with him about dieting and nodded eagerly. Right, healthy weight loss is the most important thing. Are you free tonight? There's a new milk tea shop that opened up next to the school." "No." I cut him off, picked up the drink from my desk, and pushed it back into his hands with a distant smile. "I'm on a diet, so I don't drink this stuff. Besides, I promised Bella I'd go to the bookstore with her after school." I deliberately told an obvious lie. The whole school knew Bella and I were practically strangers now. Lucas stood there, holding the rejected drink, his face a mixture of green and white. And in the back of the room, Bella's head dropped, her shoulders slumped even further. Bella's situation went from bad to worse. Her old group of friends had long since abandoned her, some even joining in on the ridicule. "Bella, does your new uniform feel a little small already? Watch your step, don't want to crack the floorboards." "What's that smell?" "Smells like BO." In gym class, no one wanted to be her partner for badminton. She couldn't run, she couldn't do the long jump, and even the simplest warm-up exercises left her breathless and clumsy, drawing waves of laughter. The teacher's looks changed from concern to exasperation and subtle annoyance. Once in math class, she was so large that she knocked her chair over when she stood up, making a huge noise that interrupted the teacher. The math teacher, a notoriously strict middle-aged man, frowned and said harshly, "Bella, can't you be more careful? You're a grown girl, and you can't even sit in a chair properly. Look at the state you're in." The class fell silent, then erupted in stifled giggles. Bella's face turned beet red, and tears welled up in her eyes, but she bit her lip and refused to cry. She struggled to right the chair and clumsily sat back down, keeping her head buried in her arms for the rest of the class. And me? I sat in the front row, my back straight, listening attentively to the lesson. I could even answer the teacher's questions, earning nods of approval. I could feel that sticky, hateful glare burning into my back. "Is it painful, Bella? You can't handle this? Compared to the despair you put me through, this isn't even the interest on the debt." At the parent-teacher conference after midterms, my mom took the day off to attend. She was dressed nicely, her face glowing with a pride I hadn't seen in years. My grades had improved dramatically, shooting up from the middle of the class to the top 10. More importantly, I had completely transformed. I was pretty and confident. Several parents gathered around her, praising her parenting. "Mrs. Wallace, how did your Anna get so pretty? And her grades are so good. Yes, what's your secret? You have to share." My mom couldn't stop smiling. She tried to be modest, saying, "Oh, there's no secret. She just grew up and started taking things seriously." In another corner of the classroom, Bella's mom had a grim expression. Bella's grades had plummeted, and her size had become a topic of gossip among the parents. Her mom tried to talk to the homeroom teacher, her voice laced with anxiety and impatience. "Mr. Davis, my Bella wasn't like this before. Is she sick? How did she get so big? She used to be so slim." The teacher pushed up his glasses, his tone professionally detached. "Mrs. Smith, we've also been concerned about Bella's situation. It is rather unusual. I would suggest you take her for a full medical checkup. Also, her mental state doesn't seem to be very good. She's always distracted in class, and her grades have dropped significantly this time." Bella's mom stared at the damning numbers on the report card, then glanced at the surrounding parents who were casting looks of pity or scorn her way. Her face grew darker and darker. After the conference, I overheard Bella's mom in the hallway, her voice tight with suppressed anger. "How many times have I told you to control your diet and exercise? Look at you now. And your grades are terrible. You've completely embarrassed me." Then came Bella's tearful defense. "I didn't. I have been dieting. I have been exercising. It was Anna. It has to be her fault. Her." Her mom cut her off sharply. "You blame others for your own failures? How come Anna managed to turn herself around so well? Look at you. Starting today, your allowance is cut off, and I'm taking your phone. If you don't lose this weight, you can stop calling me your mother." Angry footsteps faded away, leaving only Bella's suppressed, desperate sobs echoing in the empty hallway. I stood around the corner, listening quietly. The taste of being rejected by the person closest to you. How do you like it now? Bella completely fell apart. She became paranoid, afraid to look in the mirror or step on a scale. When she walked down the street, she felt like everyone was pointing and staring at her. She tried to grasp at her last straw, Lucas. After school, she cornered him on his way to the basketball court. I happened to be passing by and slowed my pace. "Lucas," Bella's voice was choked and hoarse. "You used to say you liked my type, didn't you? You said I was cute even if I was a little chubby." Lucas looked at the girl in front of him, nearly twice his size, her face puffy and greasy with undisguised disgust and embarrassment in his eyes. He took a step back, trying to create distance. "Bella, when was that? Can you not make things up?" His tone was impatient. "When did I ever say I liked girls like you? Look at yourself. I'm begging you, just stay away from me, okay?" His words were like a cold knife, stabbing her right in the heart. She stared at him in disbelief, tears instantly streaming down her face. "Lucas, how could you say that? You were the one who said." "Said what?" Lucas cut her off, terrified she would say something else to embarrass him. His voice turned even crueler. "Do I even know you that well? You let yourself go like this and now you're trying to blame me? That's pathetic. Seriously, have some self-respect." After he finished, he dodged around her as if she were something contagious and hurried away. As he passed me, he even paused to give me an awkward, pleading smile. I stared back at him, my face a blank mask. This was the person I had a crush on for 3 years, a shallow, superficial opportunist who only cared about appearances. Bella collapsed on the ground, sobbing uncontrollably, like a broken doll that had lost all hope. A crowd of students gathered to watch the drama, pointing and whispering, but no one stepped forward to help her up. I slowly walked over to her and looked down at her from above. She looked up, her vision blurred by tears, her eyes a chaotic mix of hatred and a sliver of pleading she wouldn't even admit to herself. I leaned down and, in a voice only we could hear, said slowly and clearly, "Bella, how do you like the smell of the fattening perfume?" Her sobs stopped abruptly. Her eyes flew wide, her pupils contracting in absolute terror. She stared at me as if she had seen a ghost, her lips trembling, unable to form a single word. I straightened up, no longer looking at her pathetic state, and turned to leave. Behind me, a hysterical, completely broken scream ripped through the air. The sunlight fell on me, warm and bright. I knew her hell was just beginning, and my revenge was far from over. All the pain that was once inflicted on me, I would collect it all back, piece by piece, with interest. Bella's hysterical scream was like a stone tossed into a stagnant pond, creating a few ripples across the school before quickly sinking into silence. No one really cared why she screamed. To most, she was just a joke, a girl who had gone crazy from being too fat. Her seat was moved from the middle of the classroom to a corner in the back, next to the trash can. Teachers rarely called on her anymore, as if she didn't exist. Her uniform was always wrinkled, carrying a faint, unwashable smell of sweat and decay. And I, Anna Wallace, became the center of attention in our class, and even our entire grade. Anonymous love letters and small, neatly wrapped gifts started appearing in my desk. When I walked down the hallway, I could feel eyes on me from all directions, some envious, some curious, some openly admiring from the boys. Lucas became my most devoted follower. He found excuses to come over almost every day, sometimes asking about a problem he clearly already knew how to solve, other times accidentally buying an extra coffee. Anna, I heard a new Japanese place opened up on the west side. Are you free this weekend? He asked, leaning against my desk. The designer watch on his wrist glinted, his smile carefully calibrated for maximum charm. I didn't even look up from the physics problems I was working on. I'm busy. What about next Monday? Or whenever works for you, he pressed. I finally raised my eyes, my gaze sweeping calmly over his eager face before landing on the figure behind him. The bloated shadow was hunched over, clutching a pen so tightly her knuckles were white, the edges of her textbook crumpled in her grip. Lucas, I said, my voice quiet but loud enough for the eavesdropping students nearby to hear. Weren't you and Bella really close before? Lucas's face changed instantly, like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. He rushed to defend himself. Anna, don't get the wrong idea. I barely knew her. We were just regular classmates. The way she is now. I watched him wrinkle his nose in disgust without finishing the sentence. The meaning was clear. Oh, I said flatly, returning my attention to my work. I have to study. Lucas was left hanging, his face stiff and awkward. He didn't know whether to stay or go. A few muffled snickers came from nearby. I could feel the stare from Bella behind me, practically burning holes in my back. The final bell was both a salvation and the start of another round of torture. Students poured out of the classroom. I packed my bag and walked unhurriedly toward the school gate. I knew Bella was following me, like a heavy, venomous shadow. Sure enough, on the quiet, tree-lined path leading to our neighborhood, she sped up and blocked my way. In just 2 months, she had become almost unrecognizable. Her uniform jacket was stretched taut over her round body, the zipper straining as if it might burst at any moment. The fat on her cheeks sagged, making her expression look somewhat ferocious. She was breathing heavily from the short burst of speed. Anna Wallace. Her voice was hoarse, her eyes bloodshot and filled with a crazed hatred. It was you, wasn't it? You did this. I stopped and watched her quietly. The setting sun filtered through the leaves, casting mottled shadows on her puffy, greasy face, making her look even more pathetic. That perfume. You never used it. What did you do to me? She shrieked, waving her arms wildly, the flesh on her body jiggling with the movement. I tilted my head slightly, feigning confusion. Bella, what are you talking about? What perfume? Weren't we using it together? See, I lost the weight, didn't I? I deliberately twirled in front of her, showing off my slim waist and straight legs. That move completely set her off. You're lying, she screamed, spit flying from her mouth. You're lying. You must have swapped the perfume. Or you secretly sprayed it on me. You vicious bitch. She lunged at me, trying to grab me and shake me. But she overestimated her current agility and underestimated the reflexes I had built up over the past few months. I simply sidestepped, and she stumbled past, her bulky, clumsy body losing its balance. She fell heavily to the ground with a dull thud. Dust flew up from the ground. She lay there like a collapsed mountain of flesh, struggling to get up. I stood over her, my eyes devoid of any warmth. Bella, I said, my voice as cold as ice. You were the one with the malicious plan. You got your hands on something meant to harm people. Now that it's backfired on you, how does it feel? She snapped her head up. Her face was smeared with dirt, tears, and snot. She glared at me, her eyes promising murder. You admit it. You admit you're the one who did this to me, she roared. What did I admit? I raised an eyebrow, my tone light. I'm just stating a fact. You gave me the perfume. You said we should use it together. You used it and you got fat. I didn't use it, and I got thin. Is that so hard to understand? I crouched down, getting closer, so she could see the reflection of my now sharp, cold features in her eyes. Or maybe that perfume was never for weight loss in the first place. I lowered my voice to a demonic whisper. Maybe it was designed to transfer the fat you lose to the person you hate the most? Bella's pupils shrank to pinpricks. Her whole body started to shake violently, and the color drained from her face. An immense fear gripped her, making her forget how to breathe. She knows. She really knows everything. Looks like I guessed right, I said as I slowly stood up, brushing off non-existent dust from my hands. My voice was laced with a cold, piercing pity. So Bella, stop crying in front of me like you're the victim. You chose this fate for yourself. You deserve it. After saying those last two words, I didn't spare her another glance. I walked around her collapsed form and continued on my way. Behind me, her broken, desperate wails echoed like the death cry of a wild animal. Lingering on the empty path in the twilight, Bella took a long leave of absence. Some said she was sick, very sick. Others said her mom had locked her up at home, not wanting her to go out and embarrass the family. There were also rumors that she'd had a mental breakdown and was talking nonsense all day. The rumors flew around but were soon replaced by new gossip. Life in senior year moved too fast. No one paid attention to a loser who had hit rock bottom for long. Except for me. I knew she wasn't crazy, at least not completely. She was just trapped in a cage of her own making, tasting the bitter fruit of her own malice. Talk about me in class grew some good, some bad, but mostly positive. After all, the story of a fat girl who transformed into a beautiful, smart student was always more appealing. Even my mom's attitude towards me improved. She stopped calling me fat all the time and even started buying me pretty clothes, though the sizes were still often a bit too big. Our Anna has really changed, she would sometimes say, looking at me with a complex expression of relief and a hint of awkwardness. I was wrong before. I was too harsh. I would just smile and say nothing. Some wounds, once inflicted, can't be healed with a simple apology. Lucas was still hovering around, but after being rejected so many times, his enthusiasm began to wane, occasionally replaced by flashes of frustration and resentment. During the school-wide exercise break one day, he used the cover of the crowd to sidle up to me again. Anna Wallace, what is your problem? He hissed, his voice low and accusatory. You know how I feel about you. Just give me a straight answer, will you? I stopped and turned to face him. The sun was bright, making his handsome face look flawless, but I knew what lay beneath was rotten. Lucas, I said calmly, you like me? What does that mean? Do you like this face? Or this body? He was taken aback, clearly not expecting such a direct question. He quickly became defensive. What are you talking about? I like you for who you are, is that so wrong? Ha, I smirked. So if I was still the 180-pound Anna from before, would you still be chasing after me like this? His expression shifted through a whole spectrum of colors. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. His shifty eyes avoided mine. The answer was obvious. I guess not. I answered for him, my voice dripping with undisguised scorn. So let's not waste each other's time. Your like is too cheap for me. With that, I turned and melted back into the crowd, ignoring his stunned, flushed face. The students around us seemed to notice the tension and cast curious glances our way. Lucas stood there, bearing their stares, his face burning with an unprecedented humiliation. He glared at my back, the initial infatuation in his eyes slowly twisting into a venomous resentment. Anna Wallace, you'll regret this, he thought viciously. I didn't turn back, but I could feel his gaze turn sinister. Good. The fake persona was gone, leaving only naked ugliness. Bella's part in this was almost over. And Lucas, it's time for your performance to begin. I cracked my knuckles, feeling the steady beat of my heart. This banquet of revenge was far from its climax. The days passed in the rustle of pen on paper, the countdown to the college entrance exams on the blackboard shrinking with each day. My weight stabilized at a number I was happy with. My skin had a healthy glow from exercise, and my features, once buried, were finally free. Sometimes I'd catch my reflection in a window and feel a moment of disorientation. The name Bella had all but vanished from daily conversation in our class. Only her empty, dust-covered desk in the back corner served as a reminder that she had ever existed. Then, a month before the final exams, an explosive piece of news spread like wildfire through the school. Bella had officially withdrawn. The reason given was medical leave. Her family had filed the paperwork. Rumor had it her weight had reached a staggering number. She could no longer walk on her own, and was suffering from severe high blood pressure and heart problems, forcing her to be hospitalized. Whispers said her mental state was terrible. She was constantly raving in the hospital, saying things like, "Anna Wallace stole my life." But no one believed her. They just dismissed it as the ramblings of someone who couldn't handle the pressure. When I heard the news, I was in the middle of a science practice test. My pen didn't even pause. It was to be expected. The evil she had planted had finally rotted and consumed her. The perfume's effect was apparently even more potent and lasting than I had imagined. On the last day of exams, the school was filled with a sense of manic release. Test papers and books were torn to shreds and thrown from the windows, fluttering down like a pale snowstorm. I calmly packed my bag and walked out of the classroom. The hallway was a chaotic scene of cheering, hugging, and crying students. "Anna Wallace!" A familiar, annoying voice called out. Lucas pushed through the crowd to block my path. He had clearly made an effort today. His hair was styled, and he was holding a tacky bouquet of red roses, a do-or-die expression on his face. The crowd quieted down, all eyes turning to us, eager for a show. "Anna," he said, taking a deep breath and raising his voice so everyone could hear. "Be my girlfriend. I've liked you for a long time." He didn't get down on one knee, but the way he presented the roses did earn a few catcalls. I looked at him, at the poorly hidden smugness in his eyes, as if he were bestowing some great honor upon me. Suddenly I laughed. Not a touch laugh, or a shy one, but a cold, mocking, condescending laugh. "Lucas," my voice cut clearly through the noise. "Are you kidding me?" His confident expression faltered. "I'm serious." "Serious," I repeated, my eyes flicking from the roses in his hand back to his face. "What makes you think I would ever accept someone who, when I was at my fattest and ugliest, when everyone was laughing at me, joined in and called me a fat pig?" The hallway fell dead silent. The color drained from Lucas's face. He shot a panicked look around. The jeering gazes had now turned to shock, contempt, and morbid curiosity. You're lying," he stammered, his voice cracking. "Am I?" I took a step closer, staring him down. "Do you need me to jog your memory? It was by the flower beds downstairs. Bella was holding your arm, and you said word for word, 'A fat pig like Anna Wallace is disgusting to look at. How dare she have a crush on me?' Should I find a few witnesses from that day?" The words were like a series of sharp slaps across Lucas's face. His mouth hung open, a strangled sound coming from his throat, but he couldn't form a single word of denial. Because I was telling the truth. To impress the newly slimmed down Bella, he had said things even crueler than that. The whispers around us exploded into a roar. "Damn, for real? Lucas is that much of a scumbag?" I never would have guessed. No wonder Anna always ignored him. The stares were like daggers, piercing him with shame. The roses fell from his hand and were crushed underfoot. His face went from white to green, then to red. Finally, he hissed through clenched teeth, "Anna Wallace, you're ruthless." He couldn't stand it any longer. He shoved his way through the crowd and ran, like a dog with its tail between its legs. I stood there, watching his back disappear down the stairs, my face expressionless. With the last of the shallow, hypocritical accomplices dealt with, I didn't feel the satisfaction I expected, only a cold, empty calm. The debts of my past life were mostly settled. The long summer vacation began. I got a part-time job at a coffee shop, and my days were simple and fulfilling. Occasionally, I'd hear bits of news about Bella from old classmates. They said she had been transferred to a special hospital in another state that treated obesity and psychological issues. and that her condition hadn't improved. As for Lucas, I heard he bombed his finals and only got into a second-rate state college. He spent the whole summer hiding at home, hardly showing his face. One evening at the end of July, I was walking home from work when a haggard-looking middle-aged woman stopped me at the entrance to my neighborhood. It was Bella's mom. She looked like she had aged 10 years. Her eyes were sunken, her hair was a mess, and her former air of superiority was gone, replaced by exhaustion and a desperate anxiety. Anna Wallace. She grabbed my arm with surprising strength, her nails digging into my flesh. Auntie is begging you. Please tell me, what did you do to Bella? I frowned and shook her hand off, taking a step back to create some distance. Mrs. Smith, I don't know what you're talking about. You do. You have to know, she said, her voice sharp and emotional. Bella told me everything. She said it was the perfume. The perfume was the problem. She said you did this to her. Anna, for the sake of your old friendship, please tell me what happened. How can we make Bella better? She's not going to make it. The doctor said if she doesn't lose weight, her heart is going to give out. Tears streamed down her face as she spoke, and she tried to grab me again. I looked at her coldly, at this picture of a heartbroken mother. Once upon a time, my own mother had hurled insults at me and treated me with disgust because of my weight. Mrs. Smith, I said, my voice flat, Bella gave me the perfume. She was the one who suggested we use it together. She used it and had a problem, and now you're coming to me for answers? Don't you think that's ridiculous? Bella's mom froze, her mouth open, tears stuck on her face. As for why she turned out this way, I paused, my gaze sharp. You should ask your darling daughter what her real intentions were when she got that perfume in the first place. Ask her if she ever considered that what goes around comes around. Bella's mom stumbled back as if struck by lightning, her face ashen. It seemed she understood something from my words. From my eyes, a suspicion she didn't want to believe, but couldn't deny. Impossible, Bella, she wouldn't, she mumbled, her eyes losing focus. I ignored her and walked into the neighborhood. Behind me, I could hear her suppressed, hopeless sobs. The warm summer night air brushed against my face. I looked up at the scattered stars in the sky. It was all finally over. My university acceptance letter arrived. I got into a good school, far away from this city. Before I left, I was cleaning out my old things and found a dusty notebook on the bottom shelf of my bookcase. It was my diary from my past life. I flipped it open to a random page. The words were blurred, stained by tears. Date Sunny. Gained another 2 pounds. Why? Why am I still getting fat when I eat nothing? Bella lost more weight today. She looked so pretty in her new dress. Lucas smiled at her. Mom called me a waste of space, a disgrace to the family. Being alive is so tiring. Reading those words, filled with despair and self-doubt, I still felt a faint, familiar ache in my heart. But the pain was quickly replaced by a sense of release. I closed the diary and, without a moment's hesitation, threw it into the trash can downstairs, tossing out that dark, painful past along with it. As I sat on the train, watching the scenery fly by, I knew my new life had truly begun. As for Bella and Lucas, they were already far behind me, like 2 blurry, insignificant dark spots on the platform, destined to be crushed and forgotten by the train of time. The train window reflected my own clear, calm eyes. Anna Wallace, keep moving forward. Don't look back. Story 2. 5 years after I married the fire captain, news came that he had died in the line of duty. Everyone told me to remarry, but I kept the promise I made to him on our wedding day. 1 heart, 1 love, for a lifetime. For him, I cared for his paralyzed mother-in-law for 10 years. My hair turned gray, my face grew worn, and my body broke down from the strain. I died from exhaustion before she did. It was only after I died, my soul floating in the air, that I learned the truth. My fire captain husband hadn't died at all. He was in another city, living with his old flame. They even had a son, who was now over 10 years old, a happy family of 3. All those years of sacrifice had been a complete joke. He had married me just to get a free caretaker for his paralyzed mother. Reborn, I found myself back on the day I was told my husband had been killed. This time, I looked the firefighter who brought the news in the eye and said, "I'm going to the fire station." I want to see his body cremated with my own eyes. Ma'am, the captain, he died in the line of duty. The young firefighter's eyes were red, his voice choked with emotion. My hands, which had been massaging my mother-in-law, paused. The warm steam clouded my vision. It wasn't a dream. I was really back. Last time. Those words shattered my world. I fainted from grief, then spent 10 years of my youth, until my hair turned white and my body gave out, caring for my paralyzed mother-in-law until the day I died. Only when my soul was free did I see Wyatt with his old flame, Chloe in another city, surrounded by their children. My decade of devotion had been nothing but an elaborate lie. I was just a free nursemaid he had hired. Hatred wrapped around my heart like a poisonous vine. From the other room, my mother-in-law called out, "Zoe, what's taking you so long?" I put down the basin of water, suppressed the storm of emotions inside me, and spoke clearly to the young firefighter. "I'm going to the fire station. I want to see his body cremated with my own eyes." The young firefighter stared at me, stunned. My mother-in-law shrieked her objections from the other room. I didn't budge. I used her sense of duty and the promise of survivor benefits to get her to agree. In the end, we both got into the car headed for the funeral home. The atmosphere inside the crematorium was solemn and mournful. The service proceeded step by step until it was time for the final viewing. An attendant opened the casket. The body lay there peacefully. His face had been touched up, but you could still see traces of burns. The bone structure, the sharp jawline, it was undeniably Wyatt. He lay there with his eyes closed, his face pale and still. He was a very convincing actor. My mother-in-law threw herself onto the casket, sobbing her heart out. "My son, how could you leave me like this?" I stood by, watching coldly, my heart pounding in my chest not from sorrow, but from rage and the thrilling anticipation of exposing his lie. I walked forward and gently supported my mother-in-law, who had nearly collapsed. My voice was choked with emotion, but my words were crystal clear. "Mom, don't be so sad. Let me have one last look at Wyatt, to see him off." I leaned over the casket, my fingers trembling as if in grief, and touched the cold cheek of the body. Then, with all my strength, my fingertips dug into the softest, most hidden part of his inner arm. My nails sank deep into the flesh, and I felt the muscle beneath tense instantly. Wyatt's eyelashes fluttered almost imperceptibly, but he held on, refusing to move. "Fine. Let's see how long you can take it." I pulled my hand back and instead clasped his cold, stiff one, as if a wife clinging to her husband for the last time. But only I knew that my thumb was pressing down hard on the sensitive pressure point between his thumb and index finger, grinding into it with all the hatred of 2 lifetimes. It was a spot that could cause agonizing pain. "Wyatt, how could you be so cruel, leaving me and Mom behind?" I whispered, my voice just loud enough for him to hear. Meanwhile, my hand showed no mercy. I could feel the muscles in his palm twitching. For a split second, his breathing hitched. It was faint, but I was so close, I felt it clearly. My mother-in-law was still wailing beside me, and everyone else was lost in their own grief. No one noticed my subtle abuse. That should be enough. I straightened up, my eyes filled with tears, and spoke to the attendant with a desperate, frantic edge to my voice. "Close it. Take him in. I want to see him turn to ash with my own eyes." I practically spat out the last few words. The attendant looked at me with pity but said nothing as he prepared to close the lid. The gurney began to move slowly toward the massive, dark opening of the incinerator. My mother-in-law let out an even more piercing scream and tried to throw herself forward, but was held back. The furnace door slowly opened, a wave of heat washing out. The gurney was about to be pushed into the inferno that would reduce all flesh and bone to dust. "Stop. Stop." A roar filled with absolute terror erupted from the casket. Before everyone's horrified eyes, the dead body shot upright on the gurney. Wyatt's face was as white as a sheet, his forehead beaded with sweat, his eyes wide with leftover terror and the frantic relief of a man who had just escaped death. He gasped for air, the spots on his arm and hand where I had pinched and pressed him surely turning a deep purple. He couldn't keep up the act any longer. The genuine fear of the incinerator had overpowered all his planning and self-control. The entire hall fell silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Everyone stood frozen, staring in disbelief at the resurrection. My mother-in-law's cries caught in her throat. Her cloudy eyes stared at her son sitting up, first in disbelief, then in overwhelming joy, followed by a deeper confusion and shock. Wyatt! The fire chief's face was grim, his voice a brewing storm. I stood where I was, watching the flustered man who had just exposed his own lie. A slow, cold smile spread across my face. Wyatt! You finally broke. My eyes were like two blades of ice, fixed on Wyatt's pale, panicked face. He sat up, gasping for breath, his eyes darting around, unable to meet mine or the stunned, angry gazes of the people around him. Wyatt! Wyatt! My mother-in-law was the first to react. Her limp body suddenly surged with surprising strength. She threw herself forward again, this time clinging to her son on the gurney, laughing and crying at the same time. You're not dead. You're really not dead. I knew it. I knew you wouldn't leave me. It's a miracle. A miracle. She was babbling, shaking with emotion. Wyatt was trapped in his mother's tight embrace. He swallowed hard, his eyes scanning the room in a panic, his lips trembling, unable to form a single word. How could he explain this? That he came back from the dead? That he was willing to go as far as the crematorium to escape his life? The dead silence in the hall shattered as the room erupted. Captain, what's going on? He's alive? No, he was never dead. Faking his own death. That's a serious offense. The fire chief's face was beyond grim, it was thunderous. He strode forward, his eyes like daggers, and hissed through his teeth. Wyatt! You will explain to me, right now, what the hell is going on? The cold sweat from his earlier fear was still on Wyatt's forehead, now joined by fresh beads of panic. He opened his mouth, but only meaningless sounds came out. His eyes were desperate. I stood at the center of the storm, feeling the shock, anger, and contempt from all sides, as well as the growing looks of sympathy directed at me. I gently pushed aside the equally stunned young firefighter next to me and walked slowly toward the mother and son on the gurney. The sound of my heels clicked on the floor, each step echoing in the silent hall. I stopped in front of them, my gaze first falling on my mother-in-law's tear and joy-streaked, but utterly confused face. My voice was quiet but carried a strange intensity. Mom, look. Wyatt's not dead. He's perfectly fine. My tone was terrifyingly calm. My mother-in-law nodded vigorously, clutching her son as if he might disappear. Yes, my son's not dead. He's not dead. They made a mistake. Her voice trailed off, as she herself knew how flimsy that excuse sounded. I smiled faintly and turned to the ashen-faced, trembling Wyatt. Wyatt, it's so good that you're not dead. So tell me, why did the department tell me you were killed in the line of duty? Why were you lying here? Why were you pretending to be dead? With each question, Wyatt's face grew paler, his body trembling almost imperceptibly. The bruises on his arm must have been throbbing. My mother-in-law was completely stunned. She looked at me, then at her son's pale face and evasive eyes. A terrible thought finally pushed through her joy. She started shaking Wyatt. Yes, Wyatt, what is going on? Say something. Why did you pretend to be dead? Tell me. Wyatt's Adam's apple bobbed. The cold sweat had soaked through the burial clothes he was wearing. He looked pleadingly at the chief, but the chief just stared back at him coldly, offering no way out. It was a mission, wasn't it? I suddenly raised my voice, feigning a sudden, excited realization. I stepped forward and grabbed Wyatt's arm again right on the spot I had pinched earlier, and felt him flinch. Wyatt, you were on some kind of secret mission, weren't you? You had to fake your death to go undercover? Is that it? Say something. I tilted my head back, tears welling in my eyes, playing the part of a wife who had just been through an emotional roller coaster, desperately trying to find a plausible explanation for her husband's insane behavior. I offered him a way out, but every question was another push toward the edge of the cliff. Wyatt clearly hadn't expected me to help him like this. He froze, a flicker of surprised hope in his eyes. He almost instinctively went along with it, nodding vaguely. Yes, Zoe, don't ask. It's classified. The word classified was barely out of his mouth when. Bullshit, the fire chief roared, cutting him off. Wyatt, you're still trying to lie at a time like this? What kind of secret mission requires you to fake your death and end up in a crematorium. What do you take this department for? What do you take your uniform for? The chief's roar was like thunder, making Wyatt tremble. That tiny glimmer of hope was shattered. He hung his head, unable to say another word. My mother-in-law was terrified by the chief's outburst. She stared at the furious chief, then at her defeated son, and finally realized the situation was far more serious than she could have imagined. She stopped her wailing and just clutched her son's arm, her face ashen. I let go of Wyatt's arm, wiped away the tears I had forced out, and turned to the chief. My voice was calm again, with just the right amount of exhaustion and emotion. Sir, since Wyatt is okay, let's just end this farce here. I'm sorry for all the trouble this has caused you and the department. My reasonableness and composure, my pale and grief-stricken face, stood in stark contrast to Wyatt's ridiculous deception and my mother-in-law's hysterics. The chief looked at me with a complex mix of sympathy, guilt, and anger. He took a deep breath, trying to control his rage, and waved his hand. Take Wyatt back to the station. Strict interrogation. Under isolation. Everyone involved in this. I want every single one of them investigated. Two stern-faced firefighters immediately stepped forward and unceremoniously hauled the dazed Wyatt off the gurney. Wyatt! My son! My mother-in-law tried to rush forward again, but was stopped by the chief's sharp glare and a female firefighter. Mrs. Miller, I am so sorry you had to go through this, the chief said, walking over to me, his tone heavy. We will take you and your mother-in-law home. And rest assured we will get to the bottom of this and give you, and this department, a full account of what happened. I just nodded, saying nothing more. An account? I didn't need their account. I would collect on this debt myself, piece by piece, with interest. On the way back, my mother-in-law was completely silent. She was huddled in her seat, her face gray, her eyes vacant. She kept stealing glances at me, her expression a mixture of confusion, anxiety, and a dawning fear. Even she knew her son was in serious trouble this time, and that a mission wasn't going to cut it. Faking his death, defrauding the department, trying to collect survivor benefits if all that came out. The car had barely stopped in front of our house when she grabbed my wrist, her eyes fixed on me. Zoe, tell me the truth. You knew all along, didn't you? Today you did this on purpose. You pinched him, didn't you? You insisted on the cremation just to force him out. Didn't you? I slowly pried her cold, trembling fingers off me and suddenly smiled. It was a light, faint smile, but it felt like a bitter winter wind that chilled you to the bone. Mom, I said softly, with a kind of innocent cruelty, now that Wyatt's mission has failed, does that mean we have to give the survivor benefits back? And that burial suit looks expensive. Where's that money going to come from? My mother-in-law's eyes flew wide, her pupils constricting. Her hand slipped from mine. Money benefits. The severe punishment her son was facing, these cold, hard realities washed over her like ice water, extinguishing the fleeting joy of his resurrection, leaving only endless panic and cold dread. Seeing her face drain of all color, I turned, opened the car door, and got out without looking back. Back in the house, the familiar, suffocating smell of stale air hit me. My mother-in-law collapsed into a chair like a puppet with its strings cut, mumbling over and over. How could this happen? What's going to happen to my son? Every so often, she would shoot me a look filled with suspicion, fear, and blame. I ignored her and went straight into the bedroom Wyatt and I used to share. Everything in it was a reminder of my past foolishness. I yanked open the closet and threw all of Wyatt's few clothes, which had occupied the best space, onto the floor. The cheap jewelry he had given me with fake sentiment, the cards with his empty words, I swept them all into the trash. Zoe, what are you doing? My mother-in-law heard the noise and rushed in. Seeing the mess, she shrieked. Are you crazy? How dare you throw out Wyatt's things? I stopped and straightened up, looking at her coldly. Mom, Wyatt isn't dead. He tried to fake his death to get insurance money and defraud the department. You know how serious that is, don't you? Should I keep this stuff around for the investigators to see? Or do you actually think he's coming back here? My questions left her speechless. Her face changed colors, her lips trembled, but she couldn't come up with a response. Finally, she just managed a weak insult. You heartless woman. He's still your husband. Husband. I scoffed, my voice dripping with ice. A man who plotted to deceive me for a decade, who had another family with another woman and a son on the side. You call him a husband? Mom, if you want your son to have any chance at all, you'll shut your mouth and stay out of it. Another woman? A son. My mother-in-law seized on the keywords, her eyes widening. What are you talking about? What other woman? What son? So Wyatt had even kept his own mother in the dark. I sneered internally but said no more, just gave her a meaningful look, and went back to cleaning. Let her stew on that. The seeds of doubt had been planted. They would grow. The next few days were quiet but tense. There was no news from the fire department. I knew the investigation into Wyatt was underway. My mother-in-law was on edge, trying to call the station several times, but I stopped her each time, saying it would interfere with the investigation. Her looks toward me grew more complex, filled with increasing fear and suspicion. I used these days to calmly go over my memories from my past life, especially concerning where Wyatt and Chloe might be hiding and their financial situation. I also consulted a lawyer about the legal ramifications of Wyatt's actions, as well as divorce and asset division. This time I wouldn't be a passive victim. Law and money were my best weapons. Just as my mother-in-law was about to go stir crazy, the doorbell rang. It wasn't someone from the fire department. It was a flashy, middle-aged woman I recognized from my past life. I had seen her near Wyatt and Chloe's love nest. It was Chloe's equally tacky aunt. Behind her stood Chloe herself, in a cream-colored dress, with delicate makeup, looking every bit the fragile, innocent flower. They finally showed up. I sneered to myself, my face betraying nothing. My mother-in-law didn't recognize them. She frowned. Who are you looking for? Chloe's aunt plastered on an exaggerated smile. Oh, this must be Captain Miller's home, right? We're Chloe's relatives. We heard the captain had a little trouble and wanted to come check on his mother. Her eyes swept over the small, shabby living room, a flicker of disdain in them. Chloe stepped forward, her brow furrowed with worry, her voice as soft as silk. Hello, Mom. I'm Chloe. How is Wyatt doing? We're all so worried about him. As she spoke, her eyes drifted toward me with a subtle, challenging look. When my mother-in-law heard they were here for her son, her expression softened slightly, but the intimate Wyatt and Chloe's demeanor made her frown again. She looked at me, confused. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, a half-smile on my face as I watched Chloe's performance. Miss, you seem to be very well informed. Wyatt is currently under investigation by the department. Even we, his family, don't know the details. In what capacity are you so worried about him? Chloe was clearly not expecting such a direct attack. Her face stiffened for a moment. Then she looked as if she were about to cry. Ma'am, please don't misunderstand. Wyatt and I are just good friends. When I heard he was in trouble, I just couldn't. Good friends. I cut her off, my tone mocking. You come to another man's house and call his legal wife ma'am? Miss, you have a very special definition of good friends. I emphasized the words legal wife. Chloe's aunt immediately jumped in. Hey, what's with your attitude? Our Chloe has a good heart. Captain Miller helped her out a lot in the past. Now that he's in trouble, what's wrong with us showing some concern? Helped her out? To what extent? My eyes swept sharply over Chloe's still flat stomach, my voice turning to ice. Helped her to the point of faking his own death, abandoning his wife and mother, and using the insurance money to run off with you to a condo on the west side, and even fathering a 10-year-old son? The words hit like a thunderclap. My mother-in-law shot up from her chair, her finger trembling as she pointed at Chloe. What did you say? A son? He and my son. Chloe and her aunt's faces went pale. They never imagined I knew so much. You're lying. Chloe shrieked, but the panic in her eyes gave her away. Am I? I sneered and pulled out my phone, showing them a photo from my past life of their apartment building. There were no people in it, but the location was clear. Should I go to this address and ask the neighbors if they often see Wyatt coming and going as Dr. Evans's husband? Oh, and your son goes to Northwood Elementary, 4th grade, right? His name is Ethan. Chloe was completely flustered, her lips trembling, her innocent act shattered. How do you know? Are you stalking us? If you don't want anyone to know, don't do it in the first place. I put my phone away and stared at her coldly. Wyatt is being investigated for fraud and bigamy. Are you here to confirm his crimes, or are you trying to see if he's sold you out yet? I'm not. You're lying. Chloe screamed. Her aunt panicked and tried to pull her back. My mother-in-law finally understood. A storm of rage and humiliation erupted in her eyes. She lunged forward and grabbed a handful of Chloe's hair. You shameless homewrecker. So you're the one who seduced my son. You're the one who made him fake his death. You're the one who's sending him to prison. I'll kill you, you witch. My mother-in-law had done housework for years. She was strong. Chloe shrieked as her hair was pulled, her perfect hairstyle ruined, her face scratched by my mother-in-law's nails. Let go of Chloe. You old hag, let her go. The aunt tried to pull them apart. The doorway descended into chaos, screaming, cursing, and fighting. I watched the dog-eat-dog drama unfold, a coldness spreading through me. This was the love Wyatt had betrayed everything for? It was disgusting. I didn't stop my mother-in-law until Chloe was finally pulled away by her aunt. Her hair a mess, her clothes disheveled, her face scratched, and her makeup streaked with tears. The innocent flower was gone. Get out! My mother-in-law panted, pointing a shaking finger at the door. If you ever come back, I'll tear your face off. Chloe and her aunt, thoroughly defeated, stammered a few threats like, You just wait. Wyatt won't let you get away with this. Before fleeing. After the door closed, my mother-in-law collapsed to the floor as if all her strength had left her and began to sob. This time, the grief was real for her son, and for her own foolishness. I walked over and looked down at her, my voice calm and steady. Mom, do you see now? Your precious son abandoned this family a long time ago. He deceived everyone, including you. My mother-in-law looked up at me, her face streaked with tears. For the first time, her eyes held none of their usual spite, only endless regret and confusion. After Chloe and her aunt fled, my mother-in-law seemed to have lost her will. She cried on the floor for a long time before silently dragging herself to her room and shutting the door. A dead silence filled the house for the rest of the afternoon. I knew this was a devastating blow for her. The son she was so proud of was not only a liar, but also an ungrateful child who had abandoned her for another woman. I didn't have time to deal with her emotions. Chloe's visit, though it ended with her being driven away, was a reminder that I had to act fast. Wyatt was still under investigation. This was my window of opportunity. I contacted my lawyer again, told him about Chloe's visit, and gave him their likely address and other key information. The lawyer confirmed that this was crucial evidence for proving Wyatt's bigamy, and that he would start gathering evidence immediately. At the same time, I did something I would have never dared to do in my past life. I called the tip line of a popular local news program. I didn't mention Wyatt's fake death or bigamy directly. Instead, speaking as the wife of a firefighter, I vaguely asked what a family's rights were if a public servant faked their death for personal gain, and how the relevant departments would handle such a situation. I sounded sincere, helpless, and lost, dropping just enough hints to pique their interest. Reporters are sharp. They immediately smelled a major story. The next day, a reporter managed to get in touch with me. I didn't agree to an interview right away. I just said that the situation was complicated, that the department was investigating, and that I couldn't say much, but I hinted that I might need a platform to speak out once the investigation was over. I had lit the fuse. After that, I went to the bank. Using my memory and our marriage certificate, I found a little-used account that Wyatt had opened in my name. Just as I suspected, there was a small but significant amount of money in it, his personal savings. I withdrew every penny without a second thought. I also checked the transaction history on his main salary account and found several suspicious transfers over the past year. The amounts were small, but the frequency was regular, and the recipient information was vague. I took pictures as evidence. Just as I was about to leave the bank, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I answered, and a man's voice, low and urgent, said, "Is this Zoe Miller? This is Wyatt. What did you do to my mom? Chloe said you and some people beat her up. I'm telling you, if you have a problem, come to me. Don't you dare touch them." He couldn't hold it in any longer. Chloe's tears had worked quickly. I walked to a quiet corner of the bank and spoke into the phone, my voice calm, almost mocking. Captain Miller? Oh wait, maybe not for much longer. You can still make private calls while you're under investigation? It seems the security isn't tight enough. He gasped on the other end, clearly caught off guard. He lowered his voice and said through gritted teeth, "Cut the crap. What do you want?" "What do I want?" I laughed softly. "Wyatt, you lied to me for 10 years. You used me as a free caregiver while you took the money from my death to live it up with another woman and have a family. And now you're asking me what I want. That's all in the past." "I had my reasons," he started, using his usual manipulative tone. "Reasons?" I cut him off, my voice turning cold. "Your reason is that you're a greedy bastard who wanted the reputation of a devoted son and husband while also enjoying a beautiful mistress and a secret son. Wyatt, you can't have it all." I paused, then said each word clearly. "Listen to me. First, we are getting a divorce immediately. I'll have the papers drawn up. You get nothing, and you will compensate me for 10 years of emotional distress and unpaid labor. Second, you will publicly clarify and return all the survivor benefits and honors you fraudulently obtained. Third, I will see to it that you and Chloe are prosecuted for bigamy." "You're insane," Wyatt hissed. "Zoe, don't push me. If you push me too far, You'll what?" I said coldly. "You can't even save yourself right now. What are you going to do? Fake your death again? Or send your precious Chloe back to my house to cause a scene, so I can gather more evidence of your bigamy?" The only sound from the other end was his heavy, angry breathing. "All right, Wyatt," I said finally. "Don't call me again, and don't send your mistress to bother me. Save it for the investigators and the judge." With that, I hung up and blocked his number. I knew that call would only make him more desperate. And desperate people make mistakes. I was right. 2 days later, my lawyer called. His private investigator had been watching the condo and had gotten photos of Chloe and a young boy hurriedly moving out. Trying to run? Not so fast. I immediately packaged that information, along with the bank records and the recording I had made of Chloe's visit, and anonymously mailed it to the fire department's Internal Affairs Division and the office of the chief in charge of the case. I was sure this help would speed up Wyatt's investigation considerably. A few days later, another bombshell dropped. Wyatt had been caught trying to use an old friend from the force to pass a message and transfer money to Chloe. That was the last straw. The fire chief himself, along with 2 other officials, came to my house. They informed me that Wyatt was now in official custody and would be handed over to the legal authorities, facing charges of fraud and bigamy, among other things. They also, on behalf of the department, offered me their deepest apologies and condolences, and informed me that they would be revoking all of Wyatt's honors and benefits, and would provide me with financial assistance. The chief's voice was heavy. "Mrs. Miller, we are heartbroken that our department produced such a disgrace. We are so sorry for what you have been through." I looked down, showing the appropriate amount of grief and strength. "Thank you for bringing me justice. I never thought he was this kind of person." My mother-in-law stood by, her face ashen. She tried to speak up for her son several times, but under the chief's stern gaze and my icy stare, she said nothing, only shed silent tears. After they left, I knew Wyatt's career and freedom were over. He would face the full force of the law, but that wasn't enough. The humiliation and pain he and Chloe had caused me couldn't be erased by a prison sentence. The day Wyatt was officially transferred to the prosecutor's office, I contacted the reporter I had spoken to earlier and gave them some of the details that could be made public. Soon, an article titled, "Fallen Hero Fake Death for Insurance, Lived Double Life Devoted Wife's Decade of Sacrifice a Lie," appeared in the local news, complete with a pixelated photo of Wyatt and a picture of the fire station. It quickly went viral. Public outrage was immense. The comments were filled with phrases like "scumbag" and "I feel so bad for the wife." Wyatt's reputation was destroyed, and the fire department's image took a hit as well. Of course, they quickly issued a statement distancing themselves from him. I watched it all unfold calmly. This was just the interest payment. Next up was Chloe. Through my lawyer and the investigator, I found Chloe's new address and the name of her son Ethan's school. One weekend afternoon, I went to her new place. Chloe answered the door. She looked at me as if she had seen a ghost and immediately tried to slam it shut. I blocked it with my foot and stared at her coldly. What's the matter, Chloe? Not going to invite me in? We still have a lot to settle. Her face was pale, her eyes filled with resentment and fear. Zoe, what more do you want? You've already sent Wyatt to prison. Isn't that enough? He sent himself to prison. I pushed the door open and walked in. The apartment was small and messy. They had clearly moved in a hurry and were not living well. The boy, Ethan, was sitting at a small table doing his homework. He looked up at me timidly. My feelings were complicated as I looked at the child. He was innocent, but his existence was the living proof of Wyatt and Chloe's betrayal. Enough. I turned to Chloe, my voice low but sharp. You two carried on an affair, watched him lie to me for 10 years, watched me serve his mother like a fool, and laughed at me behind my back. Did you ever ask yourselves if that was enough? We didn't. Chloe shot back, but she lacked conviction. No. I stepped closer to her. Then tell me, why did you stay with him when you knew he had a wife? Why did you have his child? Was it for love, or were you after his survivor benefits and stable income? I took out my phone and showed her the screenshots of the bank transfers. Wyatt sent you this, didn't he? Using our joint assets to support you. You must have been very proud. Chloe's face grew even paler as she looked at the screenshots, her lips trembling. You investigated me? Shouldn't I have? I put my phone away and looked around the shabby apartment mockingly. It seems that without Wyatt's selfless contributions, life is a little harder for you and your son. Where's your aunt? Why isn't she helping you now? My words stung her. She trembled with rage and raised her hand as if to slap me. I caught her wrist and squeezed it hard, my eyes like daggers. Chloe, I'm warning you. Wyatt is finished, and you're not getting away with it either. You're an accomplice to bigamy. Do you think you can escape that? And all this money he spent on you from our joint account? I have the right to get it back. I threw her hand away and watched her stumble back against the wall. What do you want? She stammered, her voice filled with despair. Wait for the court summons, I said coldly. I gave the frightened boy one last look and left that disgusting place. Walking out of the building, the sunlight was a bit harsh. I knew the legal battle with Chloe was just beginning. The bigamy charges, the recovery of illegal gains, it would be a long and difficult process for her. Without Wyatt's financial support, and with a potential lawsuit hanging over her head, her future looked bleak. When I returned to the house that had once suffocated me, my mother-in-law seemed to have aged even more. She looked at me with a complicated expression, but in the end, she just sighed and said nothing. I started the divorce proceedings and began packing my things, preparing to leave this place of deceit and pain behind. To my surprise, the divorce went through smoothly. Facing irrefutable evidence of fraud and bigamy, Wyatt, wasting away in the detention center, had lost all his fight. He signed the papers without even reading my terms, begging only that I go easy on him in court. Holding the divorce decree, looking at his hasty, sloppy signature, I felt a deep sense of irony. This was his so-called love and responsibility? When faced with disaster, his only thought was how to reduce his own sentence. As for Chloe, my lawyer had already filed a lawsuit against her for bigamy and unjust enrichment. When the summons was delivered to her new rental, I heard she fainted on the spot. Her aunt was nowhere to be seen this time. When the tree falls, the monkeys scatter. My mother-in-law seemed to have accepted her fate. She stopped crying and became more withdrawn and sullen, looking at me with a mixture of fear and resentment. I knew she still harbored the fantasy of her son getting out and them reuniting. But I wouldn't give her that chance. Just when I thought everything was settled, and I was ready to pack up and start a new life, an unexpected visitor arrived. It was Chloe, but this time she was alone. She looked even more haggard than before, with dark circles under her eyes. Her once perfectly styled hair was dry and frizzy, and she wore a faded old coat. The innocent flower was long gone. She wasn't here to cause trouble. She was here to negotiate. Zoe, she said, standing at the door, her voice hoarse with exhaustion. Can we talk? I raised an eyebrow and let her in. I was curious to see what she was up to. In the living room, my mother-in-law peeked out from her room watching. Chloe sat down, her hands twisting nervously in her lap, her head down. I know I'm sorry and Wyatt is sorry too. But what's done is done. Ethan is still young, he can't be without a mother. Can you drop the lawsuit? I almost laughed out loud. Drop the lawsuit? Chloe, are you joking? You and Wyatt made a fool of me for 10 years, and now you think a simple sorry will make it all go away. No, she looked up, her eyes bloodshot and emotional. I can compensate you. I know Wyatt secretly bought an investment account in your name, with himself as the beneficiary. I know the password. There's over $100,000 in it. If you drop the lawsuit, I'll give you the money and the password. My interest was piqued. So there was more? That bastard Wyatt was full of surprises. I had no idea that money even existed. It seemed he wasn't just using me as a free caregiver, he was also secretly hiding our assets. But I kept my expression neutral, my smile mocking. An investment account in my name is my money to begin with. You're offering to compensate me with my own money? Chloe, you're a clever one. Chloe's face paled. But you can't get it without the password. And if you drop the lawsuit, I can tell you a secret about Wyatt and his mom, a secret that involves you. Oh, an unexpected bonus. I was intrigued. I leaned forward slightly. What secret? Chloe latched onto this as if it were a lifeline. She lowered her voice and spoke quickly. Wyatt isn't his mother's biological son. He was adopted. She knew all along, which is why she's always been so demanding of him. She's afraid he'll abandon her in her old age. And Wyatt knows too, which is why he feels indebted to her and tries so hard to be the perfect son. He married you partly because you have no family, so you'd be easy to control and could help him pay off his debt to her. The news hit me like a lightning bolt. So that was it. No wonder my mother-in-law was so controlling of Wyatt, almost pathologically so. No wonder Wyatt was always so meek and obedient in front of her, to the point of absurdity. It all made sense. They weren't mother and son, they were two people bound together by mutual need and manipulation. And I was the carefully chosen sacrifice to maintain their twisted relationship. A wave of absurdity and renewed anger washed over me, quickly replaced by a cold clarity. That's a very valuable secret, I said, looking into Chloe's hopeful and fearful eyes, and I smiled slowly. That secret is interesting. But, my tone shifted. It's not enough. Chloe was stunned. What more do you want? I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the gray sky, my voice calm but unyielding. First, you will hand over that investment account, money and password. It's mine. Second, you will testify in court as a witness against Wyatt, confirming his bigamy and detailing how you conspired to fake his death. Third, I turned to face her, my gaze sharp. Once this is over, you and your son will leave the city and never come back. You will have no further contact with Wyatt. If you can't do that, I paused, my voice chilling. Not only will I send you to prison, but I will also make sure your son knows what a despicable mother he has and what a vile liar his father is. How do you think he'll be treated at school? Do you think he'll ever escape the shadow you've cast over his life? No. You can't touch my son. Chloe shrieked like a cornered animal, her face white with terror. Her son was her weakness, her bottom line. Then do as I say, I said sharply. You are in no position to bargain. Chloe collapsed into the chair, shaking, and finally, as if all her strength had left her, she nodded in despair. I looked away, satisfied. Having Chloe testify against Wyatt would be the final, most painful blow. It would also seal his fate, ensuring he would never recover. Just then, the door to the back room slammed open, and my mother-in-law stormed out, her face contorted with rage. She had heard everything. Chloe, you poisonous bitch. How dare you lie? I'll rip your mouth out, she shrieked, lunging at Chloe like a madwoman. The secret of the adoption being revealed had destroyed her last shred of dignity and her control over her son. Chloe screamed and tried to get away. I watched the drama unfold without interfering. Let the dogs fight. It saved me the trouble. In the end, my mother-in-law was restrained by neighbors and the court officers who had just arrived to serve papers. Chloe took the opportunity to flee. Before she left, She gave me one last look, filled with deep resentment but also a profound sense of powerlessness. I knew she would do as I said, for her son. The shock was too much for my mother-in-law. She developed a high fever that night and started talking deliriously, cursing Wyatt, then Chloe, then her own miserable fate. I didn't take her to the hospital. I just gave her some fever medicine and watched her suffer. She deserved it. A few days later, Chloe delivered the investment account information and password as promised and through my lawyer, agreed to testify as a witness in Wyatt's trial. Wyatt's trial was a swift affair. With Chloe's testimony and the mountain of evidence, he was found guilty of fraud and bigamy and, with the charges combined, sentenced to 10 years in prison. The day he was sentenced, he stood in the defendant's box, completely broken. His eyes were empty, and he seemed to have aged 20 years in an instant. He tried to look at me in the gallery, his eyes a mix of regret, pleading, and maybe a little resentment. I met his gaze, my face a blank mask, until he was led away by the bailiffs. I never looked back. As for Chloe, because she had cooperated as a witness, and because I had eased up on my end, she received a suspended sentence. But her reputation was ruined. She lost her job, and she and her son left the city in disgrace. Her life was destroyed too. I finalized the divorce and recovered the money Wyatt had hidden, which, combined with the assistance from the fire department and the return benefits, gave me a decent sum to start over. I sold the house filled with painful memories. I didn't keep a penny of the money. I donated it all to the fire department's fund for families in need, a small atonement for Wyatt's sins, and a final severing of all ties to the past. The day I left, the weather was beautiful. I took my mother-in-law, who was now barely mobile and increasingly confused, to a modest nursing home. I paid for her care for the rest of her life, my final act of duty, and a way to ensure she would never bother me again. Standing on the train platform, the sun was warm on my skin. I looked at the train that was about to depart and took a deep breath. My past life was over, like a dream. My new life was just beginning. Wyatt, Chloe, my mother-in-law, the people who had dragged me into the abyss had all received their just desserts. My long, satisfying revenge was finally complete. I was no longer the meek, long-suffering Zoe. I was the Zoe who had climbed out of hell and dragged her enemies down with her. The road ahead was long, but this time, I would live only for myself. The train slowly pulled away from the station, carrying me toward a new, limitless future. The window reflected my calm, determined face. The debts were paid. The path ahead was bright.